All right, in a few minutes from now, U.S. President Donald Trump will give his maiden State of the Union address. The theme of Trump's speech will be building a safe, strong and proud America. The State of the Union address gives the U.S. President an opportunity to outline his agenda for the next 12 months, highlight past accomplishments and lay out new political proposals. Now, Trump's address to both houses of American legislature could focus on policies related to employment, economy, infrastructure, immigration, trade and national security. Trump has said that he will see support of Democrats for his proposed immigration overall. Also, he could tout his government's accomplishment of passing tax reforms. Now, continuing with the tradition of American presidents inviting select guests to the State of the Union address, Trump will have military veterans, first responders to hurricanes and wildfires, families of children killed in street gang violence seated in the gallery. Now, all lawmakers are allowed to bring their own guests. A Republican lawmaker, for instance, has invited the widow of Indian national Srinivas Kochibotla, who was shot dead in a hate crime in the U.S. last year. Sexual assault victims, immigrants protected by the so-called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals or DACA policy, and victims of gun violence all are said to be on the list of attendees. All right, I have with me Ambassador Arun Singh in the studio with me. Good morning, Ambassador. The stage is set for the maiden Trump speech. What do we expect for him to say when he does indeed take the podium there?
So, as you mentioned, Ramesh, this speech is being watched closely. It's the first State of the Union address. Now, last year, after his inaugural in January, on 28th February, he did address a joint session of the U.S. Congress, the House and the Senate. But that was more like sort of the first getting to know you kind of speech, not really the State of the Union. So that is watched. People would be watching closely because in many ways he has been a disruptive president and he has presented himself as that. Many things he will bring to the table and articulate have been different from what earlier presidents have been saying. So people will wait to see that some of the new things that he has brought to the table, tougher line on immigration, a new kind of trade policies, where he keeps saying about fair trade rather than free trade. An earlier president used to speak of free trade. How does he articulate that? And on many issues, he has flip-flopped. So although he has been disruptive, his positions have changed. If you, for example, take the case of China. During the campaign, he was very strong on China. After the summit in Mar-a-Lago with the Chinese president in April, he became very soft on China, that I can work with China, I can work with China in the context of North Korea. But the latest U.S. National Security Strategy document that came out in December and the National Defense Strategy document that came out in January has been once again very strong on China, how China has been breaking the rules, not just of trade, but international norms, and need to be addressed differently. People will also be watching to see what does he say on Afghanistan. Because on Afghanistan, he had said that it would now be a conditions-based engagement, enhanced military presence. You articulated that he has said there will be no talks with the Taliban. But in the last few days, the Taliban have carried out many violent strikes inside Afghanistan, and terrorist strikes, large number of people have been killed. So what is going to be the policy in Afghanistan? Is he going to hold the line? People would also want to see what does he articulate on Pakistan. Because since August, in the early phase of the administration, the approach was that let's give Pakistan a little more time to do the right thing. But since August, they've taken a very tough line. In January, he tweeted that Pakistan cannot continue to receive aid from us and then deceive us on the ground. And Pakistan has responded strongly. So we have to see how does he sustain that, or is there some kind of compromise that is worked out there. And on the economic side, clearly, he will articulate that there has been success under his presidency. Economic growth rates are high. Stock market has picked up. Speaking in Davos, he said that people have picked up $7 trillion worth of wealth through the stock market since he was elected. and after the taxes, after change in regulation, there's been a lot of new investment. So I think people would watch to see what does he highlight as a success,
right,
and where does he position himself on issues where he had gone back and forth. There will be some continuity with the address last year in February, because as you mentioned, it has been projected this will be a speech projecting a safe, strong and proud America. And I recall in his February address he had said that now we are talking of a new chapter of American greatness, a new national pride is sweeping across the nation. So those thoughts are similar.
Sure.
So I think all this will be watched.
Ambassador Singh, do hold your thought. I'm now joined by Kate Fisher, who is joining us from outside Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Kate, or should I say good evening where you are. What should we expect from Donald Trump's maiden State of the Union address? Would his focus be on domestic issues, economy, infrastructure, jobs, immigration? Or should we expect also for him to speak about foreign policy issues, especially China, Russia, Iran and North Korea?
Yes, I think it is going to cover all of those things. He will be very keen to stress the domestic issues that he believes he has done well on, namely tax reform. That is his one single legislative success story in this first year of his term in office. He'll also be talking, he says, about his big plans for this year, which include a $1 trillion plan for improving the infrastructure here in the United States of America. They have crumbling bridges and airports and roads that need a lot of attention. Donald Trump will stress in this speech that he is the man to sort all of this out, and he's pledging a huge amount of money to do just that. Immigration will also be a key part of this speech. Democrats listening in the chamber will be hoping to hear that he will be aiming to try to help the dreamers, as they're called, the children that came to this country with immigrant parents as children. He has threatened to send them home. They'll be hoping that he's going to show a level of compromise on that issue, but he's also probably going to stress about the importance of increasing border security, border control, and of course building his wall.
Indeed. Kate, in the last few days, we've heard President Trump speak at Davos at the World Economic Forum, where some would say he sounded conciliatory and a little more presidential than he has been in the last year. So what should we expect in terms of the key focus areas? And comparisons are inevitable between what Obama did and said in his 8 years and Trump now. So what's the American public mood as we speak and we anticipate the Trump speech this evening?
Well, that's right. He has just come back from Davos in Switzerland, and you're right. He portrayed a very different President Trump from the one a lot of us are used to hearing. He was conciliatory. He did play to his crowd there of all the heads of industry and so on who were in Davos. And he played down his kind of more extreme views, if you like, those views which play very well with his base, with the people who voted for him here in the United States. He played those down, and we saw a much more calm, controlled president in Davos. The question is, which president will turn up this evening? Will it be the off-the-cuff president who could say anything at any time and you can't really predict, or will he stick to that script and show a calm, controlled president who is promising to be a different president this year from perhaps the one that many people thought he was in his first year?
Absolutely, Kate. We'll know in a while whether President Trump will indeed sound presidential or not. But coming to the other question which is engaging attention around the world, when the American president speaks, what he does not say will be as important as what he indeed says. And people who will be in the gallery seated there as he speaks, and the people who will not be there will also be important. Now, we've given to understand that many Democrat lawmakers have chosen to boycott this event. What are you picking up from your sources about the guest list, who will attend, who will not attend?
That's right. As you say, several Democratic lawmakers have said they are not going to come in protest at Donald Trump. Those who are coming, several of them, like Nancy Pelosi, one of the key Democratic leaders in Congress, are bringing dreamers, the people I described just a little earlier, the children of immigrants who came to the country illegally with their parents as children. They are undocumented, but after legislation brought in by President Obama, they have the right to live and work in this country. Many Democrats are going to bring those people as their guests to show the Republicans, to show President the human cost, if you like, of immigration. First Lady Melania Trump, on the other hand, also...
All right, we'll try to fix that audio connection with Kate in a bit, but these are live visuals coming to you from the White House, where President Trump is expected to leave in moments from now for the Capitol Hill, where he'll address his maiden State of the Union address. And these are visuals coming to you from the House of Representatives, the lower house of American legislature, where lawmakers from both houses, the House and the Senate, are in attendance for Trump's maiden State of the Union address. And these are the live visuals coming to you from White House, where President Trump is getting into his motorcade and making his way to Capitol Hill, the seat of American legislature.
State of the Union strong. Would you consider firing Bob Mueller?
Just to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest from Washington, President Donald Trump of the U.S. is all set to deliver his maiden State of the Union address, which will be a report card of sorts over the year gone by, and also he will list out his priorities going forward. He can be expected to talk about domestic issues, the economy, infrastructure, immigration, jobs, as well as foreign and security policies, especially the hot topics such as Iran, North Korea, Russia, the Indo-Pacific, terrorism, Afghanistan, Pakistan, you name it, the entire gamut of bilateral, regional and global issues of interest and concern alike for India and the world. All right, at this point in time, I want to bring back Ambassador Singh into the discussion. Ambassador Singh, there we heard Kate talking about the mood, as it were, in the American public as we speak. And coming back to Trump's most recent speech at Davos, where he said America is open for business. America first does not mean America alone. Your thoughts?
So again, very interestingly, many people have commented that his speech in Davos, as you said, was presidential. He was more balanced. Perhaps he was not as provocative as he has been in some of his other comments. But I went back and looked at the speech that the last time an American president gave at Davos. Because American presidents normally have not been going with regularity. And the last speech by an American president at Davos was in 2000 by President Bill Clinton. And when you compare the two speeches, they're completely different. Here was President Bill Clinton
talking about... It was a complete different era altogether.
Different era, talking about globalization, free trade, how America benefits from free trade, arguing for China to be brought into the WTO and how everybody would benefit. And President Trump's message was completely different. America first. And no American president for a long time has said America first. They've talked about America leading the world for everybody to benefit. So although he did say that America is open for business, the tone was different. America is open to business, come and invest in America. We have relaxed taxes, and today most profitable investments will take place in the United States. And for example, he said there has never been a better time to hire, to build, to invest and to grow in the U.S.
Indeed.
And then again emphasizing that the U.S. is ready to do bilateral trade deals, whereas President Bill Clinton was talking of multilateral trade deals. So I think the message that President Trump has brought in America, through America, including at Davos, is very, very different from earlier messages.
Sure.
And two other points I wanted to draw your attention, which you referred to. People would also be watching what he says on Iran, because he has indicated that after May, he will not certify the nuclear deal with Iran. And there'll be consequences from that. So we have to see what is the position he takes. Also on North Korea, because he's been taking very strong hardline positions on North Korea. But many would argue that the North Korean leader has, in a sense, outmaneuvered him. because he managed to do what he wanted. He managed to show he has long-range missile capability. And suddenly, by reaching out to South Korea, he has softened the whole atmosphere around the Korean peninsula. So we have to see how he plays that.
Sure. Ambassador Singh, I'll come back to you in a bit, but I want to take a moment to put this into context for you, the WION viewer. And as I said, Donald Trump is all set to deliver his maiden State of the Union address. It'll give his country and the world more insights into his administration's foreign and economic policies. The next report takes a closer look at what to expect from it. State is open for business, Trump told the world at Davos last week. America first does not mean America alone, he insisted. Trump will take to the podium again, this time for his maiden State of the Union address to both houses of the U.S. legislature. So, what should America and the world expect from Trump's speech? Here's what he told reporters.
It's a big speech, an important speech. We cover immigration, and for many years, many years, they've been talking immigration. They never got anything done. We're going to get something done. We hope it's got to be bipartisan, because the Republicans really don't have the votes to get it done in any other way. So it has to be bipartisan. But hopefully, the Democrats will join us, or enough of them will join us, so we can really do something great for DACA and for immigration generally. But it's going to be, I think, a very important speech on trade. The world has taken advantage of us on trade for many years. And as you probably noticed, we're stopping that, and we're stopping it cold, and we have to. We have to have reciprocal trade. It's not a one-way deal anymore. So we have a lot of things to discuss, and we'll be discussing them, and I hope you enjoy it.
When it is the American president, what he says is important, no doubt. But what he does not say will equally be important. Besides domestic issues and the economy, Trump can be expected to dwell on North Korea, Iran, Russia, the Indo-Pacific and terrorism. All issues that have confronted successive American presidents, including Trump's immediate predecessor.
Our foreign policy has to be focused on the threat from ISIL and al-Qaeda. But it can't stop there. For even without ISIL, even without al-Qaeda, instability will continue for decades in many parts of the world. In the Middle East, in Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan, in parts of Central America and Africa and Asia. Some of these places may become safe havens for new terrorist networks.
Also expect some opposition lawmakers to boycott the event and some others to register their own protest by inviting immigrants who have been at the receiving end of Trump's attention. Bureau Report, WION. All right, coming back to you, Ambassador Singh, put it into context for the WION viewer, the text, subtext and context of what President Trump will indeed say in his State of the Union address. In terms of the Indo-Pacific, what can one expect from his statement there, especially at a time when he himself has been using this phrase very repeatedly in the last several months. Iran, as you mentioned, Russia and North Korea.
So I think on the Indo-Pacific, given the trends in the past few months, one can expect that there will be support for cooperation in the framework of the Indo-Pacific with India, with Japan, with Australia, some other countries. A strong message that U.S. would support a rules-based international order. In some way, criticism of Chinese trade policies and what they've been doing in the South China Sea area. I think another area that he would refer to would be ISIS. Because in his February 28 address last year, he had said that the U.S. would demolish and destroy ISIS. And the fact is that on the ground, ISIS has been pushed back significantly. And U.S. has also been part of the effort. So he may want to take some credit for that. But although he may want to take some credit for that, on the ground, U.S. is really playing a weak hand. Because in terms of actual impact on the ground today, for a post-crisis resolution of the issue, Russia, Turkey, Iran are playing a much stronger hand. So U.S. had some success, but not full success. And on Iran, perhaps he will articulate something similar to what he said in the middle of January, at the time when he gave the final waiver on sanctions. where he said he would not certify the deal, and he will call for a supplementary agreement to be worked out, which from his point of view should restrict some of Iran's policy choices and Iran's ballistic missile program. Now, whether the European countries would go along with that, how Iran would respond, we have to wait and see. And on North Korea, I think he's in a bit of a bind, because he'll certainly say that nuclear North Korea is not acceptable. He'll criticize the North Korean leader. But at the moment, the North Korean leader has managed to diffuse the situation a bit on the South Korean by having some talks with South Korea and fielding a joint team in some areas for the Winter Olympics. So I think these are some of the dynamics that will play out. But he will assert again, because the thoughts that keep coming, even in Davos, for example, he said, I'm here to represent the interests of the American people. Now, this kind of articulation we have not seen earlier, because the earlier US always spoke about American leadership in the world. And when he gave the address in February last year, he said that each country has the right to chart its own path. Again, that kind of acceptance of each country setting the path for itself is something that the US has not done since the Second World War, because they believe that they have now a responsibility to provide global leadership in terms of norms. Trump is stepping back from that. And he's doing that because he believes that his base, 30% of the US population, his main voter base,
absolutely,
has felt alienated from the process of globalization. And he needs to continue reaching out to them. And although a lot of people around the world have been critical of some of his pronouncements, some of his provocative comments, his base has remained with him. So he knows what he needs to do to ensure that his main support structure remains with him, and he remains in position to keep doing well in terms of electoral outcomes.
Indeed. On that note, we are just moments away from the much anticipated maiden State of the Union address by President Donald Trump. These are live visuals coming to you from inside the House of Representatives on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. On your screens is Speaker Paul Ryan and Vice President Mike Pence. If I can just run through the program, if I can, for the viewers. Speaker Paul Ryan presides over the address. Vice President Mike Pence will be seated beside Speaker Ryan. The Vice President, as you might be aware, is also the President of the Senate. Now, the Senate is the upper house of the American legislature. Also in attendance will be members of the U.S. President's Cabinet, Supreme Court judges, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Diplomatic Corps, and other invitees. Now, one member of the U.S. President's Cabinet, the so-called designated survivor, will not be attending. So who is and what is this designated survivor? Now, this designated survivor is usually a member of the cabinet. The survivor is one who is eligible to take presidential office and is taken to an undisclosed location. And that person will also have the nuclear button at hand. If the president, vice president, speaker, and the other high-ranking officials are killed, the designated survivor will be sworn in as the acting president. And as we're watching these live visuals coming to you from inside the lower house of American legislature, just to give a historical perspective to the event at hand, President Franklin Roosevelt of the U.S. was the first to call his speech the State of the Union Address. The term was made official under U.S. President Harry Truman. In fact, it was President Harry Truman who in January 1947 delivered the first televised State of the Union Address. And in other interesting facts about the State of the Union Address, the first live webcast on the internet was during President George W. Bush's 2002 address. All right, talking about the special guests who the President has the privilege of inviting to be seated in the gallery where the First Lady will be seated. In 1982, the U.S. President Ronald Reagan started the practice of honoring special guests sitting in the gallery. The guests sit in the First Lady's section of the gallery, as I said. And this year, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have invited 15 special guests, ranging from workers and business owners who have benefited from the economy, to parents of gang violence victims, to military members and public servants and volunteers. And these are the live visuals coming to you of the First Lady Melania Trump entering the House as we speak. All right, these are live visuals coming to you from inside the House, the lower house of the American legislature. And as we take in these visuals, I'm joined by another of my special guests in my studio at this moment. Joining me is Puneet Ahluwalia, a Republican strategist who is in India at the moment as we speak. Puneet, welcome to WION, and good to have you join us on this occasion as we watch these visuals. Take us through what to expect from the Trump speech there.
I think he's going to lay out. First thing, it's great to be at WION in Delhi, and Ambassador, good to see you again. Thank you for your service. What I would say is we should expect a very positive State of the Union. I think I heard Speaker Ryan saying that it is something which most presidents aspire to say in their first year, and that's what President Trump is going to say that is being done. So it's going to be very positive. It's going to be talking about the things we have achieved in a short span of time. And I think the economy is chugging along in a positive direction. So I think it'll be a very optimistic and a very positive State of the Union, recognizing the things and the milestone he has achieved and the Republican leadership has achieved.
And Puneet, as we're watching these live visuals of the President's cabinet entering the House, would you say that the principal focus or the key focus of Trump's speech might be on the domestic issues, economy, immigration, jobs, infrastructure, or will it be a more presidential-like, if you will, talking about the larger issues affecting the world at large?
Knowing President Trump, it could be all of the above or could be focused. I think he will cite not only domestic issues, which he has taken on very effectively. I think the tax break, that's one of his major achievements, and the translation of that tax break, which has made major U.S. corporations give bonuses to their employees, and most importantly, the tax or the wage increase they'll see on their paycheck starting in February. So that'll be something that'll drive home. But I think he will point out the things which he has done, which is talking about taking on North Korea, taking on trade issues, and most importantly, also in his newer tweet on Pakistan. So I think we can look at a host of issues which he will address, and I think he's going to go after Obamacare, which is going to be now finding to dismantle it and find it easier for Americans to pay for health care. And one more thing which we should look for is transportation, which is coming, because the infrastructure and the transportation development is going to really help to create jobs in the United States.
Puneet, Ambassador Singh was speaking about leadership and Trump's leadership role in America and the world at large. But Trump himself sees himself as a cheerleader for America and American industry, American corporates. Do you see a contradiction in terms there, leadership versus being a cheerleader for American interests around the world?
I would say he's all of the above, because not only he goes on and says and makes comments and tweets and reaches out to so many American folks, and most importantly, he is a leader, because what he's done is he has changed the dynamics of the status quo and now leading America in a direction which other countries can follow and join in. And I think when he took that historical step by announcing the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, which most leaders talk about, they give a campaign promise, but he's a man of action. So what he has done is he's given a very determined focus that this is where America is headed. It's not only going to be great, but it's also going to lead.
And comparisons will be inevitable, Puneet, Obama versus Trump. Now, we already know many of the Democratic lawmakers have chosen to boycott this event, including many of Indian origin, including Ms. Pramila Jayapal, for instance, and a host of other Democratic lawmakers. What do you make of the general mood in America today as we speak and waiting for Trump to make his maiden speech there?
If I may say in Trump's language, losers. Because what it is he's an elected president of the United States. He was chosen by the American people. And if you represent your constituency, you are doing disservice to people who are also citizens of the United States. So you can make a statement by not coming in. I think it's also the Democrats really don't know how to put him down because we're doing great. As a party, we're doing effectively well. And they just want to cry, and they just don't have any leg to stand on. So let's say, well, I'm not going to play along. I'm just going to go out and boo you from outside. Well, so be it. But guess what? We will keep doing good jobs and keep giving what the American public elected President Trump and the team he has set to lead our country to greatness.
And just to go back to the point which we're discussing before you joined, Puneeth, President Donald Trump at Davos sounded so unlike Donald Trump. He sounded conciliatory, a little more presidential than before. Can we expect the same today?
I think he is riding high and positive. Not only will he be presidential, he'll also lay out the vision for 2018. So we can really expect something concrete as he's moving forward with his vision of America and for the people which he has been elected to lead. So I am looking not only at a presidential speech, but I'm also looking at a very visionary speech of where 2018, and because understand this, we have important elections in 2018. So he has to tell the American public where the vision and the focus of the United States is.
And Ambassador Singh, we tend to look at the word disruption or disruptor with new eyes these days because it's not all bad. But Trump, you think he's a disruptor, a chief disruptor, as so to speak, in terms of American policies around the world?
Well, clearly he's brought in an element of disruption in terms of U.S. policies. Of course, he has argued that he's doing it because that's what the American voter wants. Now, from the perspective of countries and people outside the United States, till President Trump got elected, the U.S. was leading the world to set norms for globalization and pushing everybody in that direction.
Ambassador Singh, hold your thought. These are live visuals coming to us from inside the House, where President Trump has just walked in to the House of Representatives, the lower house of American legislature, and we are just moments away from Donald Trump's maiden State of the Union address. Ambassador Singh, we were discussing about Trump as the leader, cheerleader and disruptor-in-chief.
So U.S. had till then led the world for globalization, setting the norms for globalization, setting the norms for environmental standards to respond to climate change issues. And suddenly, the U.S. is saying that it will follow different policies. Now, because U.S. is the largest, the strongest economic and military power in the world, everybody else has to adjust. Mm-hmm. So he may argue that he's doing it for U.S. interests or interests of the U.S. voter that have brought him to power. But for everybody else, it is certainly a disruption. Because earlier we were all being encouraged to follow a certain set of policies, and now a different policy choice is being articulated. So whether we agree or not, we have to respond to that and deal with it in a certain way.
Indeed, and as we're watching these live visuals of Donald Trump interacting with members of the House and the Senate, just to bring our viewers up to speed with the latest coming in from Washington, D.C., we are moments away from President Donald Trump's maiden State of the Union address, in which he will share with the American people and the world at large a report card of sorts of his government's first year in office, and also lay out his priorities going forward in terms of the economy, national security and other issues confronting America and the world.